guidance on what governing boards must do. And a document was distributed just a little while ago that I'm sure it's hard for people to read through.
Has joined the meeting.
15 minutes, but I would ask Ernestine and, of course, Andy Tripp to comment on where we are now and what we need to do to be in compliance when the new rule takes effect beginning August the 14th.
Great. This is Ernestine. Do you want me to just continue, Andy?
Yes, please, Ernestine. You've got the detail.
Okay. Well, good morning. For the record, I'm Ernestine Weaver, CSCU Assistant Counsel. And I've shared a copy of the sexual misconduct reporting and support conservatives and processes policies, as well as the summary of major changes that I received from the National Association of College and University Attorneys, which is NACUA. The summary is purely informational, but as you may have been looking for a thumbnail document on the impact and changes due to the Title IX regulations, I think that summary pretty easily encapsulates the changes. And I'll discuss the policy briefly, but first I would like to give you an overview of the most pressing Title IX changes and the impact that those changes will have and what is needed to address the change. Little piece of history. In 2017, the Office of Civil Rights of the U.S. Department of Education provided its notice of public rulemaking regulations.
Has joined the meeting.
These were met with considerable controversy for a variety of reasons. While OCR viewed it as an attempt to level the playing field, victim advocates saw the changes as a removal of responsibility and potentially thwarting the ability of colleges and universities to respond to sexual misconduct. Due to the volume of the comments received by OCR, the preamble to the final regulations is actually more than 2,000 pages long. The regulation themselves are about 25 pages. But the preamble is fairly critical to understanding the new regulations. And some of the comments included in the preamble include Connecticut's affirmative consent and preponderance of evidence standard. The preamble concludes, or OCR concludes within the preamble, that the new regulations do not preclude the continuing use of those standards. The federal regulations address the obligation of the recipient of federal funds to provide equal educational access and to not discriminate on the basis of sex by being deliberately indifferent to sexual discrimination. The regulations apply to employees as well as to students that participate in activities and programs offered by the institutions. Although portions of the regulations may preempt state law, OCR has stated that sexually discriminatory behavior that does not meet Title IX standards may nonetheless be addressed by recipients through their codes of conduct. For example, they cite that Title IX does not apply to discriminatory behavior or sexual misconduct that occurs in a study abroad program, as it did not occur within the United States. But that does not preclude the recipient from enforcing its code of conduct prohibitions to discipline student or sexual harassers. Specifically, final regulations according to OCR, as stated in the preamble, are not in conflict with state law unless the state laws.
Hang on again. Ernestine, hang on for 1 second. For those people who have just joined the meeting, can we please ask you to be on mute? Because there's a lot of background noise and it's hard to hear. Thank you. Go ahead, Ernestine.
Sure. I was saying the final regulations, according to OCR, within their preamble, can state that they're not in conflict. Let me go back. The final regulations, according to OCR, as stated in the preamble, are not in conflict with state law unless the state laws, and this is a quote, obviate or alleviate the federal regulations. Admittedly, I have not fully processed what that means with respect to certain portions of the law. The final regulations, however, require that recipients use certain specific provisions, and there's no flexibility on that. And those provisions include Title IX definitions, their actual notice standard, and their investigation and hearing process. The definition of sexual harassment under Title IX, just to share that with you, is sexual harassment means conduct on the basis of sex that satisfies one or more of the following. One, an employee of the recipient conditioning the provision of an aid, benefit, or service of the recipient on an individual's participation in unwelcome sexual conduct. Two, unwelcome conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person equal access to the recipient's education program or activity. Or three, sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking as defined by very specifically stated federal
Has left the meeting.
This definition of sexual harassment, of course, does not match Connecticut's, nor do we rarely encounter a case, fortunately, that would meet the standard of being so severe,
Has joined the meeting.
or objectively offensive. So we have some question as to how all of this will blend. Title IX requires actual notice. This means that the Title IX coordinator or a designated official who has an authority to implement corrective measures must have notice of sexual harassment. The BOR policy, on the other hand, has required that all employees report sexual misconduct. There seems to be nothing that prohibits continuation of that practice, but it's no longer required under Title IX. Title IX final regulations require that for those cases that meet the definition of sexual harassment, for which a formal written complaint has been filed, the recipient must then follow its prescribed Title IX investigation and hearing process. Although we currently provide live hearings, the Title IX prescribed process is very different from what's happening now, as certain elements have been added, such as cross-examination through an advisor, the use of attorneys, evidentiary standards, rape shield protections, and so forth. Also, at several of our institutions, we've used a single investigator model. This must be replaced with a process whereby the person who receives the complaint, the person investigating the complaint, the person or persons adjudicating the complaint, and if necessary, the person or persons addressing an appeal must all be different people. And of course, there are training
Has left the meeting.
attached to each person. So in a nutshell, what does this mean about the impact of these final regulations? In the big picture, the Title IX federal final regulations provide a very prescriptive process for what it has determined to be a violation of Title IX, but it does not preclude institutions from following state law, nor does it preclude institutions from enforcing its own policies and codes of conduct that address aspects of sexual harassment. But how that exactly works, because it cannot be in conflict with Title IX, that still has to be determined. But even with all of that, the real bad news is that the final regulations have an effective date of August 14th, 2020. These regulations were just, I believe we received the informal copies of these on like May, earlier this month, and the finals were just published this week. But they have an effective date of August 14th, 2020. And in order to implement these policies by that date, we have quite a lot of work to do. First off, we have to really go through an analysis to determine if any of these state provisions are in conflict with these regulations. Then we have to revise the policies. That would include the code of conduct, the handbooks. We have to create another grievance procedure for the Title IX process. We may have to revise some of the grievance procedures that we already have in place within our codes of conduct. And of course, many of these things will have to be discussed through our governance process all the way through. We will then, after creating all of these things, we have to disseminate the information about the new policies and the procedures to the faculty, staff, and students. We'll have to revise all of the training materials and our record-keeping procedures. We will need to retrain all of the faculty and employees on the new procedures and policies. We'll have to train the Title IX coordinators, the investigators, and the decision makers on all of the requirements. We have to post the training that's been offered on our websites. Considering that in some cases we have used a single investigator model, we'll have to enlist quite a few more people to be engaged in this process, as well as provide them with training. And of course, we're going to have to do some very intensive training on how to referee cross-examination by attorneys, how to apply evidentiary rules of relevance, and ratio. And because they'll have to be able to do all of that on the spot, the hearings. Obviously, this isn't feasible, even under the best circumstances, to get it done in the period of 10 weeks. But given the COVID-19, the reopening plans, faculty going off contract right now because of the summer, it's just, we're making good faith efforts. But to honestly think we're going to be ready to go with all of this by August 14th is not truly feasible. As far as so it is a little overwhelming, and there appears to be some activity, whether or not people or other states or whether our state even consider any potential action about trying to push that date back. As far as the board is involved, we will need to have a Title IX statement of policy. We'll have to review and revise the student code of conduct. And the board may want to revisit the policy that I provided, which is our misconduct reporting support services and processes policy, as need to, or the board will need to, or consider, does it need to revise any of that regarding who's a mandated reporter? I think in one sense it's a very soft policy because we do want to know
Has
what's
joined the
happening
meeting.
on our campuses, but that would be something to be looked at. But even so, we will also need to change that policy so that it is more objectively fair, as it refers to complainants and respondents, and providing complainants and respondents equal access to support services and so forth. You have the policy, and what was most important to me was not that you saw all of the red lines as much as you saw the comments that I had in the lines as to why we had certain things within that policy, what was and why certain changes should be looked at or need to be made. So I know I've been talking for a while, but that's it here we go. I'm calling it a nutshell, even though it's a big nut to crack. Do you have any questions for me? I'm sure you do.
Ernestine, thank you very much. It's obvious that you've had full days in the last few weeks. Andy, did you want to say anything? I don't hear Andy, so
He's on mute.
Hey, Naomi. There we go. I went down with the mute button. Are you there?
Yeah, hi. Did you want to say anything before we take questions?
Yeah, just briefly, the prioritization that we'll have to go through on what can we feasibly do, and what's most critical to drive compliance for those who access and are protected by this policy. We'll sort that relatively quickly. So we'll do that in partnership with the new HR shared services model, academic affairs, and certainly with Ernestine's. But over the next few weeks, it'll be more about prioritizing what we need to deliver and what we can deliver to have the best possible outcomes for those that access and are protected by this.
Thank you. Before let's begin the questions, and let's start with Merle, and then we'll work our way through. Go ahead, Merle.
Okay, I'm going to make a few comments first, and then I have some specific questions. Except I'm getting terrible feedback. I don't know what's going on. My comment is that I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest from students on this because Academic and Student Affairs Committee drafted the original language, or excuse me, worked on approving the original language because of our concern about the high number of student complaints on campuses. Actually, they weren't always even complaints. There were sexual harassment issues and sexual misconduct issues that students very often didn't report because they didn't feel that there was a fair system to deal with that. This is probably going to be worse because some of the new rules, grievance procedures, and legal process you have to go through are going to be really frightening to many students that might make a complaint. So I think it's important that we keep this in mind and how we are going to reach out to students during this process and for their understanding of what it is, and also for any comments they may have along the way. So I appreciate the involvement in the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, and I think it's really important that we have our students involved as we move forward so that there's a clear understanding of what's happening. I guess my major question to Ernestine is, I know you're developing a timeline. I just heard that from Andy Kripp, but what is, or do you have an idea of what is essential that we have in place by the middle of August? We have so many issues we're dealing with, and summer is a very difficult time to do things. So I don't know if you can just provide us any idea of how little or how much we have to do by the 14th?
One of the things that I would think that we would have to do, or that the board would be engaged in doing, is at least preparing our statement of Title IX. And also we need to be working on what would be the procedures that we would be following under Title IX. It's going to be a heavy lift. I have not actually worked on a timeline as of yet, but to get the statement of policy, I think would be the easiest way to first start with, here's how we're going to do it. And then, of course, some of the other stuff is kind of prescriptive as far as creating the framework for what's required, because the regulations pretty much tell us what we have to do. But if we can get that structure put into place, and then we can build it out with the training. But first would be the statement of policy.
Thank you.
Okay, let's hear other questions. Elise, David?
Sure. Elise, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, David.
All right. So Ernestine, that was a terrific overview, and no doubt you and others have done terrific work in this area already. You know, what I think comes through to me, and I don't want to sound overly simplistic, but it sounds like we need a new policy, and then we need procedures that enable that new policy, and then we need training, and then communication. So those are like four large items. I think the policy is probably very doable, and I think building the procedures and the training takes some time. But I also suspect that this is a wheel that other institutions and that law firms that do a lot of Title IX, not just my own, but others, they're going to be building these out as well. And so I guess I would encourage you and Andy to think about whether the procedures, the training, which would likely be via Zoom, to deliver to investigators and trainers and staff
Has
involved in the
joined the
process.
meeting.
All of that will be put together in the marketplace. Are you, the way you present this, Ernestine, almost makes me feel like you're taking all of this on, you and the team, and we're going to build this from scratch. Can you just talk a little bit about how you can marshal resources? You know, our law firms out there and other experts to help us sort of build the training, even if it requires tailoring. But have you thought about who can help us along the way to get this done?
Well, first off, the way you've outlined it is correct. That's, you know, it is policy. Then, as I said, procedures, the training, and of course, we have to do the communication portion. As far as who we've been trying to work with, I've been working with UConn because we're all in the same boat together. They're very fortunate that they have they have their compliance office that has 5 attorneys within it, and they're establishing work groups, and they're very willing to help us along, and we're working with them in this process. I think it'd be great if whatever they come up with and what we come up with kind of marry up, since we're in the same state and we're the same, you know, we're subject to the same requirements. So I've been kind of working with them on this track. I had not looked at yet because all of this has kind of hit us pretty hard and fast as to what firms are out there to do this. But we do have certain contracts with folks, but it's all brand new. But we will definitely need help on the training. I agree, because there's no way we can get all of the training done ourselves. We're very small.
Yeah, I mean, even if the first generation of all this is somewhat generic and off the market, and subject to continuous improvement and tailoring and right sizing over the next year or two, that's okay. But I don't want this, I wouldn't want this to be as laborious on you, Ernestine, as it sounds, if we can leverage those market offerings and UConn and other service offerings that may be out there. Because I mean, while this is daunting in some respects, this is business as usual in a regulated environment of any kind. New rules come out, so you got to do new policies, procedures, training, and communicate. So I want to not suggest that this is overwhelmingly new or paradigm. This is the way it is in many industries, including academia, and we're going to be fine. We've had a policy, we've got procedures, we've got training. Now we've just got to uptool all that. We've got to update all of that to be in compliance. And so I would encourage you to think about a timeline that corresponds to those key events, and what are the resources you have already, and what are the resources you need, and do we have funding, you know, and does HR or legal have the budget to work with whether it's law firms or other experts in the field to help you
Has left the
deliver
meeting.
this?
Yeah, and David, this is Andy Kripp. I think to your point, we fortunately already have, and you've seen some of the training modalities that are online that we've used in the past with vendors. So we'll be looking back to that vendors with whom we already have relationships with to see what they have and what they're developing. So we'll be reaching out to those folks that are already providing us the kind of training that you're referencing, affirmative action training and ethics training that's already built into our system and plugs into our system. To your point, look, this is bread and butter for these external folks. They do it on such a scale. I can imagine their trainers and designers and course planners are feverishly working. So we'll leverage the relationships we already have as well. But I think you've accurately outlined the 4 key items that we've got to build that timeline that I referenced in my earlier comments.
But I do want to note that we will have still
Has left the meeting.
because of the August 14th deadline and when people will be available to even receive the training, where we have the responsibility to train all of the faculty. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to them by August 14th, where many of them will be going off contract. So I just wanted, there's still, it's a challenge. Had they given us a little, even more time into making sure that everyone was back and available, it would be easier.
And I think to your point earlier, Ernestine, it's the good faith effort. That's what we're left with, giving the timing and how
Left the meeting.
operations work and where the some of the critical elements are in terms of the employees and on and off contract, particularly the faculty. You know, we'll have it available when they return, and you know, the fact that they're not on contract and can't be required to take training, if it's available, we could make it available, but we will have to wait till they're back on contract to go through the process of assigning it and requiring it.
Thank you both. It's a great update, and I'm sure you guys are gonna we'll steward this and shepherd it through fine. But if there's anything I can do to help offline, let me know.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Did we lose Naomi?
Elise, yeah, it is. I'm trying to see if Elise wants to ask anything. I don't hear Elise, so we'll come back.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, go. Do you want to ask something?
No, this is Elise. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Richie?
Oh, no, just thanks for a great job by that team. I think I echo David's sentiments. You did an outstanding job. I look forward to trying to get this implemented ASAP. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Holly? I don't hear Holly, so let's see if Aviva has anything to ask.
Charles Alexander.
Has left the meeting.
Okay, we're not able to hear from either of them. So let me can I ask you, Ernestine, just a couple of things. You made reference to new staff that will be needed. I assume it was in the investigations part of the new process. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? And is the new staff, does it have to be campus by campus, or can it be system staff?
Making sure I'm on. Actually, what I said was not so much new staff as far as the hires, but that new people or more people may need to be enlisted to provide and help with this process. I'm hearing terrible.
Okay.
Because we can't use our single investigator model any longer. We will need different people to handle different portions for a Title IX complaint. Now, that would be specific to a Title IX complaint. If it's a different student code of conduct matter, then of course we are not restricted to using the Title IX process. This is where it gets kind of quirky. It's like you can have more than one type of process for more, if it's Title IX, meaning it meets that definition, it has to go through that specific channel. and you have to have a number of people having their hands on it. But if it's goes through our own code process, it appears as though we can use our own code processes. Do we need to hire more people? We may not. I have not done an analysis on that, but we will need more people involved in the process.
Ask you, so what are the attorneys in other states from the organization about which you spoke, what are they saying? What are other states doing? I mean, given that everybody's got the same problem with faculty not working in the summer, I assume, or many have the same problem.
Everyone's pulling their hair out.
And what do they have for the fallback position after that?
Because many of them are coming to conclude that this just isn't possible to get done timely.
And
this is not a unique position that I'm taking by any.
Yeah, no, I understand. Is there any merit to being proactive, or does that just send a red flag up to right to the department and, on August 13th to say we've done this, this, and this? Here's our timeline for what else we're doing. Or does that make them look at us more carefully than some other state?
Well, hopefully we won't have any cases that would be a Title IX eligible case coming anytime soon. I think that would have us in a greater bind. If somebody all of a sudden showed up and they had a case that actually met the definition of Title IX and we weren't able to process it. But I don't know about sending up. I have not considered whether or not we want to put people on notice that we're not compliant. I think we just need to continue to make good faith efforts.
And I guess my final question, when you say we don't have any Title IX cases, what's the timeline for bringing the case? Could we have cases from last year that now somebody decides to bring?
I would have to double check that as to see if we have anything. This statute becomes effective on August 14th. I don't know if it provided for anything that would be retroactive. So they should have. So I can't answer that question. I will look at that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from Regents? Well, thank you very much, and thanks to Andy and all the folks in both of your shops. I know that this is incredibly complicated and time sensitive and not really helpful to an orderly process. So we appreciate your work, and we will wait to hear from you as to what actions you think the board will need to take in terms of policy, at least as you referred to it, adopting a statement of Title IX. So I'm sure we will be talking again, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda
has left the meeting.
Lori
The next-
Rumsteiner.
Has left the meeting.
The next item on our agenda is ADA in a COVID workplace. An update on that. Andy, do you want to begin?
Yes, I'm happy to do it. So again, for the record, Andy Quick, Vice President of Human Resources. There's really no substantive change to ADA, but what we're seeing in the publications from the enforcement agencies is guidance on how to manage and work with ADA in the COVID environment. What seems clear is we expect expanded eligibility individuals who did not require accommodation in the pre-COVID environment, those with, you think of the CDC listing, compromised immune systems, respiratory issues, who didn't require accommodation previously, now may require accommodation. So we're monitoring what gets published pretty closely as it comes out. It's just really starting now as states are beginning to open up. We're seeing some additional guidance. We're preparing to make sure that we're ready to respond to what we believe will be an increased number of applications as we are working through our own reopen process as we approach the fall semester and through the summer. So we'll be ready to manage that process. We'll probably have to allocate some additional folks against that and be sensitive to ADA requests that in a previous pre-COVID environment wouldn't have required any accommodation expense or modified work for an individual, and now may going forward. So we're
A participant has left the meeting.
On that, so that we're ready again as we go through the governor's phased planning to return.
Has left the meeting.
We're able to understand what those accommodations may be, whether it will include extended, expanded telework or modifications in the classroom or the offices. But it's a slightly different world than it was 3 to 5 months ago. And we'll be prepared to deal with it as these modifications come in as a result of a disease that at this point can't be managed or controlled and could have negative impacts on folks with compromised immune systems, et cetera, as listed by the CDC. So that's really all I have, Naomi. We just wanted to make you aware that, and the committee aware that we're looking at that, and we understand that it is going to be a change and a shift, and we have to be prepared to deal with it as we begin to work to bring folks back to work over the next coming months.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the regents of either committee? If
No, but
not,
thank you for the
we'll
update.
just. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello?
No, Naomi, it's David. I said no, but thank you to Andy for the update.
Yes, we echo David's comment. Thank you, Andy, and we'll wait to hear from you. It will be interesting to have the information on how COVID has affected ADA eligibility. So thank you. Let's move now to item 3, to the action item, which is an item for the
Walter
Has left the
HR,
meeting.
for the HR committee.
Chesenia Delgado, WCFU.
Has left the meeting. A participant has left the meeting.
And it is a resolution that's before us.
All right.
Has left the meeting.
Let's wait a minute and see who else is leaving. And then,
Has left the meeting.
All
Has
the fun
left the
stuff's
meeting.
over.
Jules.
Has left the meeting. Has left the meeting. Has left the meeting.
okay, let's try again. Item 3, which is our action item, and a resolution regarding emeritus status of SWOF members. On the phone with us is also Chris Henderson, who is working in the labor relations unit at the Regents, and we should all congratulate Chris. He just graduated from law school. And Chris, we welcome you to talk to us about this resolution.
So the resolution for you contemplates the delegation of authority for awarding emeritus status to members of the SWOF bargaining unit or administrative faculty. Currently, in their agreement, it states that emeritus status is awarded by the Board of Regents upon recommendation from the university president. The resolution attached is designed to give the university president the authority to grant this status without board approval. The emeritus status
Why don't you move around a little bit? Like put the stuff back in the Audi, maybe get those garbage bags, put them in the Jeep.
Excuse me, somebody needs to mute their phone. I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
It's okay. The emeritus status contemplates service and extraordinary service over a career to the university itself. So the resolution makes the final decision to rest with the university president. Moreover, our other collective bargaining agreements and management policies authorize the campus president, or in the case of community colleges, the CEO, to grant the emeritus status. It is SWOF that is the only one that does not provide such an authorization. So the recommendation is for the board to adopt the resolution delegating the authority for awarding emeritus status to administrative faculty to the presidents of the Connecticut State Universities.
Thank you. Are there questions from any of the regents? This is really pretty straightforward in terms of just changing the administration of emeritus status, since we as a board are not determining who receives it or who does, or how it is received. There are processes in place for that. So if there are not questions, could I hear a motion, excuse me, and a second on the emeritus status resolution?
This is Elise.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, so we have Elise and David. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstentions? The resolution passes. And so in record time, are having no more business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded by Elise and David. All in favor?
Catherine
Aye.
Christie.
And
Has
thank
left
you
the
all
meeting.
very much. The motion passes, and thank you all very much. I know it is very difficult to conduct these meetings on the phone, but our time together this morning has clearly moved along the responsibilities of the committee and the ASA committee. And thank you very much to the staff. Have a great Memorial Day weekend and stay safe.
Thanks, Naomi. You too,
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
everybody.